Hello. Welcome to another destroyer inspection in World of Warships. And it is the Z-42. Should you spend steel on the Z-42? If you've got a bunch of the existing steel ships, sure. Should you spend steel on this or on the Ragnar if you only can buy one? I actually think the Z-42 is better. Maybe not better, but I think it's more interesting. It's a more dynamic playstyle. If I were to reset my account and you put a gun to my head and said you're buying Ragnar or you're buying Z-42, I'm probably buying Z-42. I think it's more interesting. It's much more versatile. It actually has, in my opinion, quite a bit higher carry potential than Ragnar. Played solo. Remember, we typically discuss ships played solo on this channel. Um, so what is the Z-42? Well, the Z-42 is a worse version of the Z-52 with an infinitely better smokescreen. You are kind of worse in almost every measurable way except really one. So you do have a bit higher DPM. We can get that out of the way. You get about 10% higher raw DPM on both the HE and the AP compared to Z52. However, your HE only pens 25, not 32. So when you try to pen like the traditional US, French, British heavy cruisers, those kind of ships, or battleship bow and stern, you don't, or you are going to run IFHE to gimp your fire chance. The AP also has a bit less pen on the guns, which actually very significantly gimps your ability to farm battleship broadsides, particularly at medium range. It is a even though on paper it's only about 10 millimeters of pen less. It's very noticeable in game because of kind of the AP pen threshold you're looking to hit, which is about 38. Really, is probably in my mind the most crucial. Um, that's kind of where the Montanas, the Ohios are at, right? 32 side platings, all the French, British, and Japanese upper belts. So basically, what ends up happening with the AP on Z42 is once you get out past really about 10 kilometers, you're not really able to even pen the side plating of Montana. And then when you get to this max range, 12.6 base gun range, you're not even really penning like Yamato side plating. And this is perfectly flat, right? And then, of course, any angling involved at all is really gimping your plating, your ability to pen platings on BBs that are remotely angled at range. So a bit better DPM, but worse pen on both the HE and the AP. Worse firing angles. The firing angles are pretty shit on this thing. Zero point 0.1 worse concealment. Worse shell arcs. They're not super noticeable around the 6 to 8 kilometer range. They're about a second worse at 12.6 kilometers, this thing's max range. And then they really precipitously drop off a cliff if you attempt to run range on your captain on the Z42. You'll really notice a giant difference when you start trying to shoot targets at like that new max range of around 14, 15 kilometers. Then all of a sudden, these shells are almost 2 full seconds slower than Z52. Worse torpedoes. They're basically the same torps. They just go 0.5 kilometers less range. And I think they have about a 10, I want to say they have a 10-second worse reload. Z is 90. These are, yeah, 10 more second reload. So very barely worse torps, right? On the whole, the guns are probably about the same. Bad turret traverse, a bit worse arcs, a bit higher broad DPM. So there's really one thing that you have going for you in the gun department, and that is that because of the caliber of your AP, you fuse, sorry, your AP fuses on 19 millimeters of plating. Z52, because of the caliber, fuses on, I believe, 21. So what this means is that you can get guaranteed full pens on most destroyers when they're perfectly flat. Now, is this some mega giant crazy advantage over the Z52? I actually don't really think that it is. There are situations where a really bad destroyer player is perfectly flat to you, and then all of a sudden you do more damage than Z52 ever would. But realistically, there's kind of only about a 15-degree window where this AP pens and Z52's AP overpens and then the window kind of shuts and they both get full pens, and then it shuts again and they both ricochet, right? So definitely against bad destroyer players, this AP claps. This AP absolutely annihilates bad destroyer players, because good destroyer players will kind of instantaneously angle to a German destroyer if they know what they're doing, because they know they're going to be shot at by AP most likely. um, and so, maybe there's a unicorn moment where you get like one volley off when they're flat and you get pens that Z-52 wouldn't. But overall speaking, it's not some like mega ability. I think a bit more is made of it than there is. Really, just the benefit is that there probably isn't a situation where you're going to get overpenned. So yeah, against, like I'm saying, those really terrible destroyer players who are like between 80 and 110 degrees, right? They're not angled more than 10 degrees to you. You will full pen them. Z-52 won't. So and then your AP DPM is like obviously really fucking good. I mean, it's really good on the Z-52, but it's about 10% better on the Z-42. With reload mod and maybe the reload skill on the captain kicking in, you are, and heavy AP. You are pushing, well over 350k AP DPM. You're getting up there around 400k AP DPM, which is pretty mega. Um, but really, the sole value of the ship, I mean, basically at the end of the day, the sole value of the ship is the short burst smokes. There's a reason why you will hear players who love the daring. There's a reason why you will hear people say short burst smokes are the best DD smokes in the game, because they just are. It allows you to always or virtually always get maximum game impact from a single smoke screen. Uh, Now, it's a bit of an unfair comparison because the Z-52 has pretty objectively the single worst smokescreen in the entire fucking video game. It's not even as good as it's like a Russian smoke with an even more gimped dispersal time. It's fucking dog shit. So your ability to impact the game more times with your gimmick, which is either smoke farming or smoke hydro trapping, is, like I said, it's more consistent, right? The Z-52 is an incredibly feast or famine type of vision smoke trapper, because you get one chance basically, and then you don't really get to use your gimmick for many minutes at a time. Just because of how the Z-52 smoke reloads, realistically, you're only able to smoke hydro trap like one destroyer maybe every, I don't know, is 5 minutes safe to say? The smoke is really bad, right? The cooldown is really long. It's a solid like 4 to 5 minutes you can do this. Now, the Z-42, if you build the boat properly, of course, we'll go over the build at the end of the video. When I say building the boat properly, I mean building into the hydro duration, which is something that insanely to me is not typically recommended. A lot of people seem to recommend the speed boost, which I find bananas. You actually have the ability to smoke hydro trap 3 times with a single hydro. Uh, you have the ability to extremely easily guaranteed smoke hydro trap 2 destroyers with a single hydro. And that's what it's coming down to when it comes to your ability to fight destroyers. It's that the odds that the Z-42 is able to smoke hydro trap a destroyer is way high. I don't know why I'm shooting AP at this guy. I shouldn't be. I don't pen anything but his superstructure with it. But you're almost guaranteed, right? If the hydro is up, you can smoke trap people. You see with the bill, we're running the reload on the consumables, so we're getting it up even faster. Um, the Z-42, if you're a daring enjoyer, kind of think of the Z-42 as a bit harder to play, a bit more perhaps aggressive of a play style, a bit higher game impact, and a bit worse at farming. The play style is very similar when it comes to the fighting battleships and cruisers. The play style is the daring is almost identical, really. You're kiting, staying in the 8 to 10 kilometer range for most enemies. You're popping a smoke anytime you have permanent vision on them from your teammates. And then you're opportunistically spamming out pretty mediocre torps. Daring torps, it must be said, are way better than these German torps. But it's a similar play style. And then where the difference is coming in, obviously, is you're like trying to push in and typically, smoke hydro trap the destroyers, but you don't want them to have help, because at the end of the day, you're pretty easy to hit because a lot of this is down. It's not that you're a giant destroyer, it's the firing angles, man. As you've been seeing throughout this replay, the firing angles on this are some hot fucking, by destroyer standards, these are some hot dog ass firing angles. And because you only have 40% of your DPM in the bow, just going bow in and trying to mitigate, right? Like, you can't, like in a daring, you can mitigate hella damage by just going bow in. Z-42, you can mitigate a ton of damage by just pointing your bow at the destroyer you're fighting, and you still get 2/3 of your DPM in the fight. You can't do this. You get 40% of your DPM in the fight instead of 67% of your DPM. So you can't do that. So you kind of have to slug it out against enemy destroyers. You just have to angle 45 degrees. Now, of course, this is a giant problem because your gimmick is this AP pen performance against destroyers, but like the problem is when you're shooting all of your guns in the Z-42, you're kind of giving the enemy destroyer like the perfect firing angle to get AP shells on you, right? Because you have to show 45 degrees in this thing to shoot all your guns if you're pointed forward. 45 degrees. That means that all destroyer AP in the game is going to full pen you. Like, elbing AP is going to full pen your ass, right? So you have to be careful, SAP, all AP. There's really no way for you to mitigate AP damage from destroyers if they know to shoot AP at this thing, which good DD players do know, because they know that by default, if you are using all your guns, they can full pen you everywhere with AP, right? So this game, we didn't push into the Sherman because he had libtard support. So we kind of just played middle. We farmed a bit, right? You burn through 4 of the smoke screens, and then it's only after we've won the middle and the Sherman and the sub don't have help. Because the problem is, if I push in against that Sherman and sub and the libtard, then all of a sudden we're gonna have like a big problem, right? Because no skill secondaries. You saw there that I got the 3k HP. It was a bit less because I was almost full HP, but I got the Lutyens heal buff. And there is another big advantage actually that this ship has to the Z-52, and that is it has almost the same reload, right? The reload is only a little bit worse. It's like 3/4 of a second worse base reload, right? With the mods, maybe 0.6 seconds worse. But it has 40% more guns. You have 10 guns instead of 6. And what that means is when you run Lutyens, it's a lot easier and it's a lot faster to hit the is it 140 main battery hits to get the 7.5% reload reduction. So you get it way faster in the Z-42. Because you're shooting 10 guns every 3.5 seconds instead of shooting 6 guns every 3 seconds, right? So it's just it's more comfortable, and this is again why it's more consistent. It's easier to get that Lutyens buff for the gun damage output. It's easier to always make sure the smoke is being utilized properly. It's easier to always get a destroyer hydro trapped. To the point where I almost feel like this ship is. Listen, I don't think this ship is overpowered. I think that there was a good reason. There was a good reason the Z-52 had a really, really shitty smoke. Because that was back when World of Warships like pretended to balance their game, right? Wargaming pretended to balance their game. And when I play the Z-52, my gimmick still doesn't really feel fair, but it feels fair in the sense that I can only do it like maybe twice a game, right? Like, I have had games in the Z-42 where I have smoke trapped 4 destroyers. Like, in the span of 5 or 6 minutes. Just sailing around the map, smoke trapping destroyers. And it's like, is that fun? Is that fun? I don't really know if that's fun. And I think the ship is a perfect example of how we're like dumbing down the game. I said this a bit about the Z-52 video about how like all it really needed, like this ship didn't need to exist. All they really needed to do was like buff the smoke on the Z-52. But like everything about this ship really is dumbing it down. Because, like, at the end of the day, if you're really good at the Z-52, you're not gonna do like that much better in the Z-42. I do think you'll do better because it just has a better smoke, but like Z-52 is still inarguably better at farming cruisers and battleships with its guns. Now, the smoke again is what's holding it back because it can't get into those positions to utilize its guns, right? This game there wasn't a lot of destroyer action to play against, so it was mostly farming. And yes, the fast cooldown smokes are obviously way better, but then again, we have ships like this Libertad. Something like the Z-52 is going to pen these guys at 10 kilometers, right? You're not going to pen them until you're within like 8 in a Z-42, right? You can pen their bow with Z-52. You can't pen it with Z-42. No, I don't think IFHE is worth compensating for that. But it's like the dumbing down of the game. It's like the AP's a little bit better against destroyers overall, but really its strength against destroyers is you can no-brainer it, right? Like you don't have to worry about swapping if they're too broadside. And that to me is like part of what made the Z-52's AP fair, cuz like if the Z-52 smoke hydro traps you, and it gets to pen you with AP, you just evaporate, right? Because it has like 350,000 AP DPM with the build. But then the key is in a destroyer, if you are a good player, let's say you're in Ashima and you're a good player, and oh, all I have to do is sail perfectly 90 degrees flat broadside to the C-52, and I can mitigate his toxic ability to melt my ship while he smoke hydro traps me. And that's not a thing in this ship. It's just I just think it's dumbing down the game. It's like to me a little microcosm of the bad game design trends that we've had among all the classes. And as always, we're looking at two replays. I can't remember honestly if these were back to back because I played like 6 or 7 games today and I don't think we lost any. So I was just browsing the replays. I think these games they might be one apart, but trying to show a repeatable experience. Going back though to the power creep in game design, if you want to know something that will really blow your fucking noodle, when this ship was first announced, it had a 3.1 second reload and 5.8 km concealment. When it was first announced, this ship had a 50% better DPM output and stealth hydro. In case you ever, for some reason, doubt how fucking retarded these developers are, they, in testing, actually thought that design was going to make sense. Yeah, no words really to describe how insane that would have been. So this is a really, really good map for either of the Z destroyers, obviously, because I can park on this cap. And you know what? I think this might have been the game before, because this was the game before I was playing. I was playing around with Speed Boost mod or Hydra mod, and I think over the last like 30-40 games I've had in the Z, I've firmly settled on the Hydra mod being like the objectively correct choice overall because of what it enables you to do with the smoke screens. But I mean, this is like a really good map for a long range Hydro destroyer because you just bully cap any caps with islands near the borders that are small caps, right? These caps that are only 6-7 kilometers wide. You just really, really, really aggressively bully destroyers. I can just creep out here. We still have 80 seconds left on the Hydro, right? He's a bit too angled, but the second this guy goes flat, I'm going to switch to the AP. And we can also talk about another mega skill that is totally slept on a lot of destroyers, and that is running shell feeder. Running shell feeder on a ship like the Z-42 is legitimately god tier, because it is a ship that will constantly be shooting both of its ammo types depending on the angling of the ship that it's fighting, and every time you swap, you are saving about you're saving a significant amount of DPM, basically. You could be saving, in many situations, up to 50% of your DPM moment to moment. It's a mega skill that's totally slept on for destroyers that constantly shoot both ammo types that have around a 4-second reload. Crazy powerful skill. But you see here, 3 of their destroyers are dead because I'm here. Uh, that's it. I've either done the damage myself, my teammates have, but all of the damage dealt to the destroyers here has almost exclusively been off of the spotting my Hydra gave my team. Um, and obviously you can do this in the Z, but you see Z-52, but you see my smoke has been back for a while, right? And this is the point that I'm getting at is like I don't need the smoke to be back because I'm just kind of island farming people, right? But the point is, the big advantage this has over the Z-52 is you're always going to get to hydro. You're always going to get 2 smokes up per hydro. And like I said, many times 3, which is part of why I build into the hydro. Covering 3 smoke screens with a single hydro is kind of crazy powerful. Not just for smoke trapping DDs over and over again, but also you have to remember that when you're in a farming situation on the midline, uh, then obviously that extra hydro covering your smokes is helping you stay alive if you get torped, right? Those 3 smoke screens you now have protection from torpedoes in them, right? So uh, basically we won our team the game. Like the game is over. La Pampa, Fletcher, Fantastic have all died thanks to the combination of my hydro spawning, my DPM, and my teammates actually shooting people that I spot, which is always fucking cool as hell. You'd love to see it. Um, and if I was in the Z-52, right, because you remember I used 1 smoke earlier, I kind of didn't have to, but it was a prudent smoke screen to save HP, right? So I used the 1 smoke screen earlier, and there you see, like, how fast, we're getting, I think it's 140, yeah, I think it's 140 shell hits, but, like, how much faster you get, because you have, like, 35-40% more shell volume than the Z-52, so that is giving you that buff for your DPM. It's just earlier in the game, right? You're getting it, like, probably, I would say, almost a solid minute earlier in most games, which is kind of a massive little improvement to have. Um, a short game, but this is how games go. And this is when I say things like this ship I think can have higher game impact than Ragnar. Is this kind of what I mean? Like Ragnar can't do this to people. Like Ragnar can't go sit on a rock, push a button and win its team the game, right? Like that's not a thing that you can do in the Ragnar. I mean, like props to my team. Every time I spotted something, they actually shot. Yes, if my team was dog shit, then that game impact wouldn't have been as high. But that's the point. Is like the most of this damage was just my teammates, right? But all of the Fletcher, he basically gets solo killed by smoke hydro trap. La Pampa gets killed almost exclusively because of the hydro as well from earlier, and I believe even the I want to say even the Fantastic died mostly because of hydro. So it's kind of that idea of game impact over effortlessly farming, right? Like Ragnar will kite the flank and left click and farm funny damage consistently. But there's a lot of situations where it is actually quite difficult to find game impact in the Ragnar. Like when I reviewed it, it was like it's damage farming with a side of destroyer hunting. Um, and I think the Z-42 is the opposite. I do think like the vast majority of games I'm trying to start by playing aggressively, and then I will kind of open up the range, kite over and farm over time. Uh, and I think that just is like the play style I personally enjoy more is I prefer a ship that is designed for aggression and then can kite and farm pretty well if it has to. I don't necessarily enjoy a ship that is kind of never meant to push in, but kind of can sometimes, right? And that's more what the Ragnar is. You whittle the teams down and then you can push in, but you can't really start by pushing in. You're a little too team reliant on that. So I think it's a bit more interesting. And also, like I said in that review, having torpedoes. Uh, there's just games you can't win without torps. I mean, even players who are really good in ships like Druid and Ragnar, right? I think I have about a 60 win rate in Ragnar, maybe 70 in Druid. I'm like pretty okay in those ships. A lot of that's in a div though, right? I don't do the best in them solo. There's people out there who get like a 65% solo win rate in Druid and Ragnar. God bless them. They typically have a damage farming mentality, which is a good mentality to have in certain ships. Um, but there, even those people will acknowledge there are just games you can't win. There are just games where you had to fight a Venezia, a Moskva, and a Daring, and you lost all your HP early through like no fault of your own, or like CV, fucking Essex dropped you for 15k at the start of the game, and now it's late game, and it's you and your 6,000 HP Druid or your 6,000 HP Ragnar, and there's a 3/4 HP Montana or Libertad. The game's over. Like, you can't win that game, right? And that's why, to me, I value even these. Yes, these are mediocre torpedoes, even by gunboat standards, because of how power crept gunboat torps have been, right? Like Gdansk torps come to mind, Lucian torps come to mind, right? These torps are thoroughly mediocre, but sometimes that's all you need, right? Sometimes all you need is the ability to hit two torps on a battleship from stealth, and you can win the game. So to me, that's why, another reason why I think, I bought Ragnar first on my account. If I was doing it over again, I might actually buy the Z-42 first. Okay, let's go to equipment first. I see this debate in slot 2. There's no debate. You run Hydro mod. There's a very good reason for that. I see engine boost recommended on the Z a lot. I think it's 100% not the play, and it's down to the timing of the smoke and the hydro. So if you look at the timing here, after 10 seconds, you'll begin reloading. Now, this is with the 1-point captain skill reload upgrade. But you see here how basically a full cycle of smoke from when you start a smoke till the next smoke is ready is 72 seconds, okay? Which is a minute and 12 seconds. If you just run the hydro flag and you don't run the hydro mod, what will happen is you will very, 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 very barely cover 2 smoke cycles with a hydro, because you have 72 seconds on a single smoke cycle at plus another 50, right? So it takes 2 minutes, takes 122 seconds basically to pop a smoke, reload a smoke, and pop and sit in another smoke. So basically you have no coverage time. You have to chain the smokes instant fucking taneously. Now, the second you run the hydro mod, this is 160 seconds of hydro. So not only is it perfectly 100% covering, but a full cycle is 72 seconds, right? So after 140 seconds, you will have your third smoke. So not only is in a situation where you're not spamming the smokes on cooldown, not only does the hydro mod allow you to like much more comfortably guarantee a second smoke, if you're in a situation where you can spam the smokes on cooldown, you will actually get to utilize a third smoke for each hydro, which is pretty fucking mega at times. There's times that it actually comes in clutch. To me, that is way more valuable than an extra, 100 seconds per game total of speed boost. Spam smokes on cooldown, you actually cover 3 smokes with a single hydro. Or it gives you a much more comfortable buffer zone to smoke trap a DD. Maybe you reposition for 30 to 60 seconds, smoke trap a DD fully, right? I think it's like no brainer on the Z-42. On Z-52, I actually think it's a big difference because you're never going to smoke trap twice, right? Because the smoke is dog shit. Captain build, a little bit of wiggle room, probably. I think this is objectively the build here. These skills I'm hovering over, which leaves basically 4, 5, 2, 4, 4 skills, right? You absolutely want grease the gears on this thing. You absolutely want the basic build. You absolutely want main battery over Fearless Brawler. You will shoot like a Daring. You will shoot over half the time from smoke. That's kind of the rule. If half or more of your salvos are fired from without being spotted, you take this. If most of your salvos are fired while spotted, you take Fearless Brawler. I don't think range is the play on this thing really at all. You can be a cringe smoke farmer. The reason why this skill is good on the Z-52 is because you can't constantly re-smoke, and the shell arcs are better, and you're more likely to farm large targets because of the pen, right? Um, so that's kind of the reason for that. I think heavy AP is probably a no-brainer. It's either heavy AP or fire chance to me, and this skill is mega as well because it's not just 5.5 seconds, right? Let's go back to the reload time, okay? Normally, let's see, can we change to a captain without this skill maybe? Yeah, okay. So you see here that there's a 26.5 second gap, right? Are you seeing this? And typically most people don't run this flag. So you see here there's a 30-second gap, right? Your smoke disperses in 40 seconds, it reloads in 70. That's a 30-second gap. If you take this 1 point skill, oh, it's only 7.5%, right? It is. But now you see that it's not that we've cut 7.5% off the time without smoke, it's that we've cut 20% off the time without smoke, right? And then if you run that skill and the flag, you're taking almost 30% off, right? You're going from 30 seconds without smoke every cycle to 21.5 seconds without smoke every cycle, which is kind of a big deal. And to me, the other reason why I run these two skills, also this skill is god tier. The most underrated skill on DDs with a 4-ish second reload is Shell Feeder. This skill is massive on Alvaro, it's massive on Regolo, it's massive on Z-42. It's honestly one of the most underrated skills in the game on destroyers. Nobody ever recommends it. It's kind of like super good because when you get in fights with destroyers in Z-42, you'll shoot AP, shoot HE, shoot AP, shoot HE, and keeping those 2 seconds of reload time with gun feeder is kind of massive, honestly. But basically, what it comes down to is I think this is like objectively the correct build right here. All but these 2 points are kind of like the objective correct build. You can get a little greedier and have a little bit more sustain in long games by grabbing Superintendent, right? You could give up 5% damage output to grab Superintendent, or you could give up these 2 skills to grab Superintendent. I think this is the build, or you give up 3 points for Superintendent overall. Because the problem is, unlike Daring, when you get 2 kills, you don't get an extra smoke, right? Also, Daring doesn't really need gun feeder, and Daring doesn't really need grease the gears. So on Daring, it's a lot easier to give up 1 point skills. Z is very 1 point skill hungry, in my opinion. This is the build I run. I think it's just a really good build. Gun feeder, I can't stress enough what a mega skill this is. On any of these destroyers with like a 3.5 to 6 second reload, you know, the real and ships where you shoot both ammo always. Like Regolo, you get in a fight, you shoot sap, HE, sap, HE, sap, HE, sap, right? Because it has daring pen angles on the sap. It's a god tier skill on Regolo because every time you switch ammo, you don't lose out on, like it's like 30-40% of your DPM in a ship with a medium reload on a DD that shoots both ammo types. Gun feeder is basically boosting your DPM in most fights by 20 to 40%. It's a massively underrated skill. So that's the build. Captain wise is really like, armor wise, there's like nothing worth really discussing. I mean, it's like 19 everywhere. I mentioned this in the video, in the replay, but I actually think the real value of the ship is just the smoke. Like, yes, the AP is better against really, really, really terrible destroyer players, for sure. Destroyer players who go perfectly flat. If you remember, if you watch my Z-52 review, I said that the AP like effectively does arm on destroyers, and that's because like the only time Z-52 doesn't arm is when DDs are at this angle, like perfectly 90 degrees, and it overpens them. They just show like 15 degrees of angle. Z-52 AP pens people. Z-52 AP, like we mentioned, has about 20% better pen at range. It's better against battleships and cruisers. The HE has IFHE built into it compared to this thing, right, because of the increased gun caliber. I didn't even discuss running IFHE. It's stupid on this ship, in my opinion. It makes no sense. The fire starting is quite decent. Um, and it's like, again, IFHE to me is such a, like, the Z having 32 AP is nice in certain moments. 32 HE pen, sorry. But like, the idea of giving up a very nice skill and cutting your fire chance in half to run IFHE to effectively just pen like the US cruisers better, right? The US heavy cruisers, the Japanese, the French heavy cruisers. Like, it's not doing anything for you against 9 out of 10 battleships, really. It's not doing anything for you against armored cruisers, right? Personally, I'd rather have the fire starting because you have a pretty good rate of fire, and we're running the flag. That's why also this is kind of a sleeper pick because this is 40%, right? So if you run the flags and you run the captain skill, you buff the fire chance per shell from 5 to 7%, which is a 40% improvement, giving you pretty solid fires per minute. But I do overall prefer the AP just because every time you get those DD fights, that 7.5% boost is pretty nice to me. And you do shoot a lot of AP at cruisers and battleships up close too. I would say at least half of your volleys in this thing, especially at closer range or AP. Uh, I don't know. Also, this is a like an okay Elbing captain. You can swap it around, whatever. I think we're blabbing. Yeah, it's pretty much better than the Z-52 just because of the smoke. If this ship had an identical smoke screen to Z-52, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I think it would be almost inarguably a worse ship. Uh, Very, very, very marginally better against destroyers because of the just 10% better DPM output. But worse torps, worse concealment, worse turret traverse, worse AP pen, worse HE pen, right? It's kind of worse. It's kind of worse than Z-52 at everything except APing destroyers. And even then, it's very barely better. Again, only better against dogshit destroyer players. It's just the smoke. Like, there's a reason why people, especially higher skilled players, will say that daring has the best smoke in the game. This is the reason. It's the best smoke to have of all the smoke you could have on a destroyer. It's the best selfish smoke to have by far, for sure. Is the Z-42 worth buying for steel? I mean, like, honestly, I don't think either of the steel destroyers are worth buying until you have like Stalin, Austin, Incomp, Loria. I'd probably buy this over Bourgogne, but you know me, I'm a Bourgogne hater. I think it's definitely way more fun than Ragnar. I also think solo, it probably legitimately might have more game impact because it's actually better at killing destroyers. Like, Ragnar is easy to play. It's very easy to play. Um, and it's very comfortable to spot and deter enemy destroyers. But Ragnar does not kill enemy destroyers unless they're like the worst players in the game, right? Whereas this thing has like such good DPM. You smoke trap a DD, you just get 2 good AP volleys in, and you basically cripple that destroyer, right? And then the ability to have torps. I said this in the Ragnar review. Having torpedoes is like required to solo carry, in my opinion, in most destroyers. Yes, you can solo carry in the Ragnar if you're a really good player, but there are just games where you would win for free if you even had these shitty torps, and then you're in Ragnar and you can't solo carry. Um, Ragnar is probably definitely better in like a division, scouting ahead for his team because it's going to always spot the destroyers, always keep them spotted for your teammates, right? Solo play, I think like this is maybe a higher game impact. I know it sounds crazy. I just think the game impact is higher. We played a handful of games today. 7 games. They were all a win. I had probably on average like a team about as good as the enemy team, which then allows you as a player to have more game impact, right? There was probably like a little bit of luck in my matchmaker. This ship is like also though just kind of bizarrely like lucky for me. I'm sure everyone has that ship where it just like feels like you can't lose in it. And to me, the Z-42 is that ship. I think in like the 40 games I have in it, I've lost like 3. I don't know what it is. Like I am a good player at this type of ship, but I'm definitely getting like a bit blessed. I think in my game. I mean, I must be. I have 40 games in this, and I have lost 3 games at the most, I think, which is not normal. I don't think it has that kind of game impact. That win rate will go down over time, obviously, but I do think it's a very high game impact ship solo. I really do. Um, Potentially, maybe even higher game impact than Daring in DD, in high DD without vision lobbies for sure, because you can kind of like run around the map and bully every destroyer in the game if they don't have long range radar or hydro. Um, yeah, pretty fun, pretty fun. Uh, yeah, it's like everyone says Ragnar's so OP. Ragnar's unfair. It's an unfair ship. I don't know if I'd call it overpowered. I think those are two different things. Broken, but not overpowered. We've discussed this in other videos. There is a difference. Um, but I mean, I would definitely get like for sure like Austin, Stalin, Incomp, Loria over this before you even think about getting either of the DDs. Um, but it's a fun little ship. Like if you enjoy Z-52, this is just a more comfortable version. It's an easier to play, more comfortable version that's a bit better at fighting destroyers than Z-52. And because of that, I do think it has a bit higher game impact. I said in my Z-52 review, I have like a soft spot for that ship. I love the game impact that the Hydro brings. And like you saw in those 2 replays we looked at, just having a almost 3-minute long 6 km Hydro is kind of crazy. Okay, that will do it. We are blabbing. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.